Hello and welcome back to Sociology. So we are going to continue our conversation on linguistic landscapes and cultural scripts. So let's get started. Okay, so just like a linguistic landscape, a cultural script is broken down in the exact same way. Cultural script. A cultural script, right? A script is a story that we tell ourselves to explain something about our environment or our worlds. How does this relate to linguistic landscapes? So within linguistic landscapes, we utilize all of the information in our outside environment, like images and language and signs, gestures, objects to help us to understand our environment. Within that, we utilize the linguistic landscapes to help us understand these cultural scripts. These cultural scripts are created simultaneously within ourselves, our intangible culture, as well as our linguistic landscape. So for example, if I walk into a restaurant and it is very clean and everyone's in black outfits and everything's fancy and glitzy and anything. Anyway, so all of that together is going to give me some sort of story about this particular restaurant, right? And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier in regards to your home or the coffee shop or the library that you're at. All of those create linguistic landscapes together, right, in cultural scripts. So we also have an understanding of this is what it is to be female, this is what it is to be male, this is what it is to be a good parent, this is what it is to be a good teacher, this is what it is to be an amazing artist, this is what it means to be an amazing musical person. So there's a lot of things that we can understand what a cultural script is. So, right, so it is a narrative or a story that we tell ourselves to explain and understand our environment. So again, the stories that we tell ourselves and the linguistic landscape are images, symbols, and languages that we use to create these stories. So let's revisit those images from Buffalo. You should have had notes regarding these images, so I want you to take a few minutes to explore what stories do these images tell about where I grew up. Use your notes from before to help you create at least one story for each image and then for the image set, right? So there are either 3 or 4 images per set and then 2 sets in total. So I want you to think about what kind of story are we telling ourselves or each other in regards to Buffalo, the place that I live, from these images. What does it say about this city that is Buffalo? All right, pause the video and I will be right back. All right, welcome. Let's go to the next one. So to recap, a linguistic landscape is no cheating. Try to use your memory, not your flashcards. It refers to the visibility and salience of language on public and commercial signs in a given territory or region. And there's another part to this. It may serve important informational and symbolic functions as a marker of the relative power and status. So what do we mean by power and status? So we're going to learn more about status, which is a social position, a little bit later in the semester, but we want to understand what does this mean by power and status, right? So does one set of these images create a different status than the other, right? So does one set of images create a more pleasing or more desirable community than the other? Would one of these cities have a higher or lower status? And then how does this connect with power? So we see that there's a really strong connection of status and power because the higher status that something has, or the more valuable it is, the more power we within our culture give it. Do we follow? So when we talk about power in this class, we mean the ability to influence or control people's ideas and behavior. So if someone from the tourist Buffalo was asking you to do something, or someone from my Buffalo was asking you to do something, who would you be more comfortable performing the task for? Right? So another example, right? If Donald Trump is like, hey, you need to do this, and then some person that you just met that just walked up to you on the street is like, hey, you need to do this for me, who are you going to feel more inclined to perform whatever task they're asking you to do? Does that make sense? If you are at a restaurant and you are serving someone, think about the status that they bring and how that would maybe change the way that you interact or treat them. Does that make sense? So when we see power and status, we want to connect those ideas to how it influences people's behavior and ideas. Do we follow? We'll get more into that in a second. So let's try this a different way. We have two cities, one with great schools, tree-lined streets, nice cars, gourmet coffee shops, and art stores, and another with check cashing businesses, liquor stores, strip clubs, busted houses, and not a grocery store in 10 miles. Which neighborhood would you think has the higher levels of academic performance in their high school? I know, it's a whole story problem over here. I want you to take a minute and pause this video, and then I want you to think about this question and try to break it down. Welcome back again. Hopefully you've actually paused this and thought about it for a second. If not, we'll just keep going. So think about the way that we construct value. How is something valuable? Does status have something to do with if something is valuable? Does power have something to do with if something is valuable? If someone is valuable? If they can give you something that you identify as valuable? Do we follow? Right? So within our culture, we are a capitalist society. So within the capitalist society, we identify that money has a large value within our society, right? So if I am working the same job, but one job I get paid $5 for an hour, the next job I get paid $45 for an hour. We have sociological studies that look at how does the status of the position and how does the power of the influence of the money that it gives you kind of influence the way that you're going to perform that job. Does that make sense? All right, we'll talk more about this in class, but I want you to start to think about these concepts. So society scripts and landscapes. This exploration is to show how we create scripts, stories, and areas about areas and the people who live in them, even if they are not accurate. We as a whole society work together to create and maintain these stories by the way that we create the landscape through signs, images, language, and symbols, right? So we've already talked about this a little bit in class, but think about the stories that we tell ourselves, right? When we've talked about stereotypes, when we've talked about why things are happening, why certain things are happening, right? Why is it that prisons are for-profit organizations? Why is it that certain grocery stores only carry certain goods? Why is it that we are currently having such an issue in regards to bathroom policing? Why is it, right? So we've asked ourselves these sociological questions. Next part is to start to think about what stories do we tell each other to help understand these things. Do we follow? Why is it important to have a prison system? Think about all of the different stories that we as a society tell each other to try to figure out and understand why we have this. Why is it important to have this distinction between male and female and no other gender? Why is this a society? This is so important. How is it influenced? Is it influenced by religion? Is it influenced by our government? Is it influenced by our education system? How do we start thinking about and understanding these, right? So then we also want to take, how does our environment support those cultural scripts that we have constructed? So when we look at the bathroom situation, what's going on, we can see that an issue that we've been having is that we label only female and male bathrooms, right? There's a lot of people in our world, in our existence, that don't identify as female or male. So then where does it leave those individuals? Do we follow? So then we also see signs that identify what it is to be a female, what it is to be a male within these areas, right? So a female bathroom is generally like brighter colors, images of women or flowers, right? A male bathroom is a lot different. Do we follow? So then we look at how all of the landscape, how the environmental cues influence the way that we understand these cultural scripts, either support them or help to create them. Cool? Okay, so now it's your turn, friends. It is your turn to take a walk around your own neighborhoods and take some photos. You may also gather these photos online if you're unable to bring them to class. We will explore how our own linguistic landscapes create social cultural scripts about our own worlds and each other's. So this is the time that you need to start exploring, where do you live? Where is it that you feel comfortable? Where is it that you grew up? What is it about this environmental space that gives you certain narratives or certain stories that you utilize to tell yourself and others about your life? And how is it that society creates these cultural scripts to tell